several decades ago. It was a preliminary leading into what has happened in the last 4 years, and that was the intellectual movement that has occurred throughout the country. And the seeds have been planted, and the fruits of that intellectual revolution, the definition of sound monetary policy, Austrian economics, and sound money, and getting rid of the Fed. We had a similar rally right nearby here. And after that happened, of course, we had the election, and then we had the convention in September, September of '08, and there was a lot of concern, and there was a lot of enthusiasm, but there was a lot of concern about what would happen with people involved in that campaign 4 years ago. Because it was said, are they going to be like the Sunshine Patriots? Are they just going to disappear, or will this lead to some changes? Fortunately, I can report to you there were very, very few Sunshine Patriots 4 years ago, and there's a lot more supporters than we have today. The preliminary efforts were intellectual prior to '07, but the campaign that happened between '07 and '08 was, I think, the first leg, the first episode of what the revolution was all about, and it made a mark, and it didn't go away. Matter of fact, people stayed, and then the campaign for liberty was organized, and for the last 4 years, that has grown and infiltrated. There's been political action and economic activity going on, and educational opportunities going on. People come to my office now, and sometimes I look at them, and they're rather young, and I say, when they want to talk about the Fed, they've been studying about the Federal Reserve, and why we're going to get rid of the Federal Reserve, and I say, how old are you? They say, 14. So there's something inspiring a whole generation, because I look at them and I said, well, I didn't have the biggest idea what was going on when I was 14. But there's a lot of reasons for that. One is the need for it, the crisis that we're facing, the bankruptcy of our country, the knowledge that our treasury is bare, the financial system is close to being in shambles, the knowledge now that we know that the welfare state doesn't work. It impoverishes the people that it's supposed to help, and it enriches the people that are enriched when the bubbles are being formed. So this is a big difference and a big opportunity, an absolute need. And what the people are recognizing this, not only the young people, but many, many others now. There's a coalition. Before it was a recognition by the young people realizing the severity of the problem, but now it's across the political spectrum, it's across the age spectrum. So we're coming together now and bringing a lot of people together. And it's not a narrow group of people in a minority party. It's not the base of one single party. But the revolution that's going on is changing people's hearts and minds, and it's going to be pervasive. It has already invaded the independents. It's already invaded the Democrat Party, and they're looking to us to lead the charge back to liberty. And of course, I think the third stage now, we have the '07 campaign, we had the Campaign for Liberty, and now we've had this election 11 and 12. All I can tell you, it has far exceeded all my expectations. When I go around the country, I meet literally thousands of people, and they're very much involved. Many states now have elected individuals. We have men like Mike Doherty representing us in New Jersey. It's just really great. There are are some states that, and we have not heard of it, and this is the best way it is. It isn't like it was a top-down organization. It was spontaneous. The brush fires of liberty have been lit in the hearts and minds of so many people. It's no longer a minority, a restless minority. It's a gigantic movement that is occurring. It is every reason for us to be optimistic that this will continue, but we have to also realize it will not go easily. It will be difficult. Thomas Paine said tyranny is like hell and is not easily conquered. The people I know in Washington represent that. Well, let me tell you, they will not go away quietly. When you think about this is called the political struggles and the political arguments that go on in Washington, it's all over power. It has nothing to do with ideas. They're all wanting to know who's going to have the power and who's going to get the money. But guess what? We run out of money, so that's why they don't even offer budget resolutions anymore. They just go on and argue and fight over who has power. What we want is our freedoms back. We want to understand what liberty is all about. And why we should never tolerate a president that believes it's upon him, that he upon himself can declare that American citizens can be assassinated. We will repeal that. Of course, all laws that were passed by executive orders are up for removal by executive order. So as president, I can use the executive order. Just a couple of weeks ago, the president wrote an executive order that was renewed the Defense Production Act, but he had a few phrases in there. The Defense Production Act was supposed to give emergency powers to the president, dictatorial powers, which it should be on the book, but Obama changed the wording. He says in times of war, and he added, in times of peace, he can take over everything. Of course, just last week, the Supreme Court didn't help us out much by a 5-4 ruling. They said that all American citizens, no matter what the circumstances, can be strip searched without probable cause. And of course, we know that that provision in the National Defense Authorization Act should be repealed. This idea that the military can arrest American citizens, put in prison, and deny an attorney, they're reversing history all the way back to 1512. You know, the right of habeas corpus. So these kind of liberties that are being undermined. If we are complacent enough and we can watch what they do to us at the airports and have an announcement, as the president can assassinate American citizens without due process of law, responsibility falls on us, and right now more on us. Anybody would turn off to an organ, on a day like this, the responsibility is even greater, because the majority, the large number of people in any society or any changes that come about are rather complacent. They're not involved. But if you discover what's wrong and you discover what the answers are, the burden falls heavily on you to do something, and we have that responsibility. So I am so glad you're here today. Think of all the problems that we have and all the improvements we have. But there is no doubt that that one subject that we talk about so much is something that has not been done in 100 years. This is the first time the Federal Reserve and monetary policy has been an issue in a presidential campaign. So we have an obligation not only to audit the Federal Reserve, but next year, when we have the opportunity, we're going to up front offer a bill to repeal the Federal Reserve Act. Somebody asks me all the time, well, what are you going to replace it with? Well, let's replace it with the Constitution. To do is say, oh, if gold and silver can be legal tender, then it would not be serving the special interest. The entitlement system has deceived a lot of people. A lot of people say, well, we have to help the poor and we have to have a safety net. and people are sympathetic. But guess what? The housing program was sympathetic. We were going to give everybody a house. But who made all the money when the housing bubble was being blown up? And who got bailed out when it burst? And who lost their jobs? And who lost their homes? This is the reason that we have the opportunity to point out that this whole entitlement system doesn't work. The foreign policy doesn't work. The monetary policy doesn't work. And this is the reason our revolution and these changes will be successful. One reason I'm convinced that we'll be successful is one thing that is required is passion plus reason. Reason comes from logically arguing and understanding the fallacies of the current economic system. And that was what the intellectual groundwork laid down for us, the intellectual argument. But after you have that, you also have to have a passion and a determination to go out and fight for these battles. And this is what we have, and this is why you should be very encouraged to know that we can win this. I often think about the saying back in the 1960s when it was right-left paradigm, and they didn't quite understand that the definition is tyranny versus liberty. But back then they said, you know, if you weren't a bleeding heart liberal when you were 20, you didn't have a heart. But then they also said that if you weren't a conservative when you were 40, you didn't have a brain. But let me tell you, if you believe in liberty, you both have a heart and a brain. The efforts that have been put forth in the last few years are very encouraging. Connecticut, where we take a non-interventionist border policy, of course, we have been challenged so often in the past that, oh, if you don't vote for the war, you don't support the troops. How much nonsense can that be? The proof is that if you look at all the money donated by active military personnel and veterans, it's our campaign that gets more. This is the reason, of course, the foreign policy will be changed because the military is sick and tired of it. It has been ruthless to our military. Our defense is actually the support for the troops, the wearing down of our troops has been very detrimental to us. And what about how many veterans now are suffering with lack of care? Now we have an epidemic of suicides by our military. It's time for us to wake up and say the purpose of the military is to defend this country. Now, this is one place where I think we can be very proud of. We, as a people with our military, we are capable of defending ourselves. We have more weapons, everybody else put together. Nobody's going to invade us. Why do we have to go out looking for dragons to slay and looking for enemies and stirring up trouble around the world? But our real threat, we take the oath to defend against all dangers, all enemies, foreign and domestic. Let me tell you, it's the domestic enemies that we have here today that are changing our lives. We need to address some of the social problems that we have here that undermine our liberties. There's one, once the government embarks on this notion that it has to take care of ourselves, that you can't take care of yourself and the government wants to take care of you, nothing is left to your liberties. So we understand that. We understand what the First Amendment says. You can practice your religion, whichever religion you want, or not, no religion at all, just so the government stays out of it. We also know that intellectually you have the right to read whatever books you want and study. But when it comes to your own body, we can see way too much and say the government can dictate to us our diets, what we drink, what we smoke, and what we put into our bodies, and that is wrong and should be changed. They talk about the drug war and the necessity to tell people not to use drugs. Well, of course, the war on drugs has been an absolute failure. Stop. We ought to cease and desist on the drug war. We've had false promises from the administration that would be compassionate about people who use marijuana for medical reasons, but they're still putting people in prison for non-violent uses of drugs. need to do is recognize that drug addiction is a disease. It's not a crime. We ought to treat it more like people who drink too much alcohol. If you do harm to people, yes, that is a crime. But if it's your own business, your own body, it's up to you. I would give you some strong